So, ladies and gentlemen, the famous Buckyball Racing Club is here. Perfect. Did you rehearse that before?
Synchronized woohoo.
This is the most famous racing club in Elite and the oldest, I believe. So,
Yes.
guys, can you tell us a little bit more about the Buckyball Racing Club, and then I will start my race. In the meantime,
Do you want to let me go? I'm going to get all wrong, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a little history lesson, I suppose. So, Buckyball racing, for those that don't know, was a thing that was started by a guy called Electric Z back in the beta of the game, I think, actually.
Really? Does it go that far? To
It was
beta?
pre-release. Yeah, it
Wow.
was pre-release.
Okay, all right. I never knew that.
I think the first race I ever took part in was Buckyball Run 6. And that was like, just a month or two after the game had released, I think. So we'd done quite a few.
Yeah,
so
I think my one was number 4, which was in the beta.
Yeah. Okay, I know I kind of missed out on the beta actually. But yeah, so Electric Z had done these races very much in the style we do today. So sort of time trials that run for a week. People can try as many times as they like. And there's a certain style to the forum thread as well. There's a kind of a humour to it and just a kind of general, kind of style to it, I suppose. I think he kind of based it on the, like the Cannonball Run. If anyone's seen those films, there's Cannonball Run films. And there's also a real Cannonball Run across America, which is a sort of, it's obviously entirely against the law, and it's who can get East Coast to West Coast of America in real casters. So it sort of follows in that tradition. And then Electric Z eventually sort of slowed down and I think was doing other things and not playing the game so much maybe. So Drakia and a bunch of us that were really enjoying doing it sort of wanted to keep it going and took over. So we kept the original logo and sort of with Electric Z's permission and enhanced that a bit. And we changed the name from just Buckyball Runs to the Buckyball Racing Club. And we've been organising races ever since. I think we've just done our 75th race as the Buckyball Racing Club.
75 races, wow.
75 races, yeah.
Nice. So I know this, but maybe the viewers don't. So do you guys, what type of races do you do? Because I know there is, obviously the one I'm doing now is like just fly from one station to another and make a circle around all of those stations and come back to the starting point, and that's my total race time around, just so we go to the station, dock, undock, go to the next one, dock, undock, and so on. So that's sort of like, like a lap around a few stations. Are there any other types that that you would do?
There are. I tell you what, Ozric, why don't we tag team this? So I'll think of a different variant, and then you think of a different variant, and we'll see how many we can come up with. So let's think. Okay, so here's one. So I recently did one which involved going to the Guardian Beacons, and it was essentially a Guardian Beacon speed run to see how many you had to collect 3 keys from 3 different Guardian Beacons and get back to the start line as fast as possible. Next.
Well, I guess I'll do my one then. I originally did a race that was set in Paraco, which is the system where you have the 6 stations that are all orbiting the comet. And so all of the stations are really, really close to each other, to the point where actually if you sit on the landing pad of one of the outposts, in the distance you can see the, I think it's an Orbis starport, and you can actually fly to it in normal space because they're sort of so close and share the same instance. And so back when I first did the race, we didn't want to sort of deviate too much from the sort of the style that you first described. So we had a set of races that were called Midweek Madness, which was basically a way for us to try different things out. And because
I remember
that
those,
race
actually.
and they only ran sort of a couple of days. But because that race really was just a docking challenge more than anything else, because it didn't actually involve jumping to other systems, we put that in as one of those. But Alec actually sort of reimagined and redid the race recently with putting a 20-minute time limit on it and seeing how many stations you could dock at within those 20 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That was a variant of another race that I think Furry Cat did, but that idea that instead of seeing how fast you could do something, and the thing was the time, I'm quite interested in playing with that. So what Ozric's talking about was basically the time is fixed, it's 20 minutes, and it's how many times can you go around the circuit in 20 minutes. Another one I did was based on the oxygen countdown. So basically, when you launch, you turn off your life support.
That's cool.
Right, and then the race was essentially how far can you go and back again without basically running out of oxygen.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Generally, just in general, basically, a race can be anything that you can screenshot with the clock on the screen. So it can be landing pads like you're just about to do now, but it could be sale of cargo, it could be visiting coordinates on a planet, it could be seeing a stellar phenomena, it can be collecting a guard, anything that you can imagine.
Actually, I remember when they added the clock to the galaxy map, because that wasn't there at the very start, was it?
Oh, was it?
Oh, that's true, actually, yes.
That then opened up for us the ability to actually have waypoints in systems. Just as you're doing this, actually, I've just realised we're on stream, aren't we? So there's a delay.
Five seconds though, so it's not.
Oh, okay. One big tip for you is that when you leave a station, you always just head in a straight line out of the station and boost until you break mass lock.
Yeah.
Even if your target system is behind you, you wait until the FSD starts charging before you turn around to face it, because actually all that matters is getting your FSD charging as quickly as you can.
That's true.
So even if the station, the system that you're going to is directly behind you, you just want to boost straight away from it, start charging the FSD, and then you can turn around and point towards the system that you're going to.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, Ozric, actually, because I think they're still around, but if you find some videos from the really early Electric Z Buckyball runs, before we figured out that basically the only thing that mattered was escaping mass lock as fast as possible, people used to do these crazy maneuvers where, like, if the system they were jumping to was 90 degrees from the sort of straight out the mail slot, people would do these ludicrous turns in the mail slot and kind of boost sideways in the mail slot so that they could skid like round the mail slot and come out pointing upwards.
That was that one of your races, or was that someone else's race where there was bonuses for entering the station backwards?
I think that was Aloft. It was called Advanced Options. And
that was right.
You got points for going to the slot backwards. You got points for 200% heat. You got points for typing things in chat. That's really funny.
Oh yes, I remember that. And you weren't allowed to copy and paste them. You had to actually type them in. It's as the years have gone by, we have got a little bit more insane in some of the things that we do.
But it's nice, I think we get a nice variety. Like this sort of race that you're doing here, your race, the classic sort of circuit of 5 stops. A lot of people really like that, and I think, particularly after a couple of mine that are a bit over complex, perhaps, people really, thank God, it's just a simple go round and round as fast as you can.
Definitely. I mean, as much fun as it was after Dr. Nagi's race with the runs where you had to sort of damage your hull to a certain percentage and then do all that. It was so much effort and took so much concentration, and because you're trying to essentially run the entire race, you're not allowed to. You have to start with 100% hull, but then if you want the second best bonus, you have to by the time you get to the first checkpoint in the race, you have to have between 1 and 10% hull. So you're effectively trying to leave the starting station, hit the mail slot on the way out to damage your hull down to between 1 to 10%, and then complete the rest of the entire race on that. And you can get right to the end, just touch the landing pad a little bit too much, and you blow up, and that's like half an hour just gone. So after doing like a week of that, yeah, a normal, in inverted commas, race can actually feel quite nice.
Yeah. I tell you what though, like when I do events for the Hussars, because I think I do the most of them. Obviously, other people do them as well in my community, but I think I do most of them. And I did notice that when I make an event that is too complicated or too complex, not that many people would come. They'd be like, "Oh, I just can't be arsed with this shit. I just want something nice and simple." You know, when I did it once, when I was like, you know, all these commodities that you buy that are like CMM composites. You can only buy them in a specific station.
Oh yes.
Somewhere, you know, around this system, and it's like industrial stations around system A or whatever. So I got a bunch of those different ones, and every type of the commodity had their own points. Like, you know, CMM composites were for 5 points, something metrics were for 10 points, and so on. And I was sort of like ejecting them from my cargo hold, and I get gas had to collect them. And there was like one in the high res, like compromised nav beacon. There was one in the you know, the pirate res side. There was one on the planet's surface, and people are like, oh, it's too complicated, man. We don't know what to do. Like, which cargo I'm collecting? It should count same price for every cargo. Blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, I think it's a little bit too complex for people to actually properly enjoy it, rather than just, what do I do now? You know, how do I? Oh, time's up. Oh shit! Sorry, I've got 0 points now. All right then. What a great event.
Yeah, I can certainly see how that happens. I guess the slight difference with us is that because we tend to run so many races, actually, sometimes things like that can be really, really good as well.
Oh yeah.
Because it can sort of get you thinking a little bit more. I was just thinking, actually, one of my favourite ones that we've done, I was going to say recently, but actually it was probably a few years ago now, was Escape Velocity, which was where you had, was it Furry Cats race or a Lots race? I can't remember now. One of those two.
Details were.
It was where you had to land on planetary ports, but each planet that you visited, the gravity of the planet got progressively higher and higher.
That was brilliant.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool, actually.
It taught me so much about how to approach planets, because if you approach a planet that's got a gravity of like 0.01 g, then when you come into, apart from the amount of times I saw the too fast for orbital cruise message, I started to hate that message. But when you come to get into orbital cruise, you have to be going below 200 meters per second, and then as you come to approach the base, so you want to drop into glide, you have to be at quite a shallow angle, sort of not higher than 45 degrees, because otherwise you will just be going too fast. And something that I didn't know really before I started doing that race was, once you reach about 1G, or maybe even a bit less than that actually, you can effectively approach into orbital cruise directly above the place that you're heading for, and it's actually quicker to fly straight down at a 90-degree angle towards that base until you get probably only about sort of 100 meters above where you're going to drop into glide, and then you move away from the base a little bit, and then you sort of flip around and aim at the base. Because if you try and approach it at a 45-degree angle, because the gravity of the planet is so strong, it slows you down so much that it can actually take sort of 2 minutes from when you enter orbital cruise to when you actually enter glide. So it's, that's the thing that I love. Well, the thing that I love second most about Buckyball racing is that it just teaches you so many skills that you could.
I was going to say,
apply
you know, like with the
other-
approach to the space station in the Super Cruise, when you just kind of go around the planet, you know, so it's called the loop of
Yeah.
shame, but it's actually faster. It's not the
Yes.
loop of shame. It's the loop of it's the loop of getting there faster. Really, should it be called?
Yeah, the loop of speed. I
yeah.
get so annoyed when people
Yeah.
call it a loop of shame, especially when FD called it that on their streams. And then in the chat going, it's not the loop of shame.
Yeah.
How many times?
Totally meant to do it.
But that's quite interesting you say, Ozric, about, you know, like things like little tricks like this, like, you know, like approaching that to, you know, 90 degrees straight and then, you know, go a little bit, you know, to the, you know, whichever direction and then flip back and then go back to the and then enter the glide. That's like quite advanced technique to, you know, to do this. And I think like most people wouldn't even know about this.
No.
Do you have
And I
sort of
certainly
like,
wouldn't.
you know, would be nice? Do you guys have any sort of like a record of those? So, you know, it's almost like Buckyball tips and tricks sort of.
I have to say, not as good as I'd like. There is some stuff on the Discord. We've got a channel on the Discord called Hints and Tips, and when we remember, we sort of put some good stuff in there. I don't know. I mean, I'll let Ozric speak in a minute. One of the things I find is it's quite difficult to put some of this stuff into words. It's, you know, things like the perfect super cruise approach to a station, and we've talked about the loop of speed, but even, you know, there's faster ways than that even. Actually putting it into words is quite hard because you're using what you're hearing. The audio gives you an awful lot of feedback.
That's
And
true.
just sort of trying to describe the perfect approach, you sort of end up saying things like, well, you want it so that the sound of the
I
super
see.
cruise is sort of and if it
I
starts
get you.
going,
All right.
then you're going too fast. You know, it's really hard to put this stuff into words in a way that
Understood.
There's
Yeah,
like an art
that
to it.
makes sense. Yeah.
I think there's like an art to it that comes with practice. I'm recently,
Yeah.
I'm heavily involved in the Elite Races SRV Championship, which is a series of about 8 really long distance SRV races with a kind of point system, first, second, third place, etc. And again, there trying to explain how it is that you get an SRV going at 100 meters a second is quite hard to put
Yeah.
into words.
I'm rubbish at SRV driving / flying. Rubbish.
If you're interested, I can give you because I've developed 2, it should be 3, but there's only 2 for now. Races around garden ruins. The name of the race is the Desecrators because you're desecrating, you know, the ancient ruins sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
by driving around them. But I have like 2 tracks. One is for alpha side, one is for beta side. There's actually beta 2 side race as well, which I've not done yet. But I'm also going to do a gamma side one as well. But I can send you those as well. They're quite simple. You just drive around the ridge, and they're not very difficult in terms of getting your orientation, but like staying on the ridge because it's sort of like inverted ditch, if you know what I mean.
Alec knows all about that.
Yeah. Nice.
So
With
you know,
his bloody Pamesh race.
staying on top of that's quite tricky as well. And also, if you have a race, like an actual race, you know, when there's like 6 people in one instance just racing around the track, and you also enable weapons, that gets really interesting. With, you know, do you go fast and do you try to be first, or do you like keep at the back and then shoot everybody in the back and try to get ahead
Yeah.
that way, you know?
Just very, very quickly before we talk about Pamesh, because we should do really, because it is insane. Alec did a race once that was called Falling with Style, which was basically where you started off on the top of a huge mountain, and there was a base. It was about 30 kilometres away, I think,
Yeah, it was.
at
It was a
the
huge
base
mountain,
of the
yeah.
mountain. And so basically, you just have to try and jump off the side of the mountain and get down as quick as you can without blowing up.
I see.
And we decided because we run our races as time trials, so people can take part whenever for different time zones and just sort of real life stuff. But we decided that it'd be really good to try and do the first one as like a mass start. So there was the biggest problem we had was that this was before they fixed the bug for the damage multiplier for the more people that you have in an instance. So it took a lot less to blow up. But Alec was there in his cutter, I think it was, and he decided that to start the race off, he was going to drop a load of cargo that would sort of indicate the start of the race, and then we'd go off after that. Whereas what he actually did was drop the cargo and then hit the boost button on his cutter and came flying towards the SRVs and just took like half of the competitors out. And there's a few different videos of us that different people took of just us going flying off in various different directions.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Do you know what that was? That's the classic thing of having tab bound to boost.
Oh yes,
Trying
yes,
to use
yes.
tab in the chat to switch to a different target, and yeah.
It was so good, so good. But yeah,
you're right about learning stuff. Though. I do love that. It's amazing. Even with 75 races under our belt, I still generally learn something. Just some little thing that I didn't know. Whether it's how to efficiently deploy a ship-launched fighter, or like you were saying about the angle on the high G planet. There's always some little thing that you learn.
But you know what's also good, like about fuel management on a race like I'm doing now, and I remember this from this very race. You know, one of the guys from the Hussars, I think it was Arnold actually. He must be in the table, in the top table, because he's definitely got somewhere near the top, and he sort of. Like he doesn't play very often, but when Arnold plays, he like gets all in. He goes like va-bank, 100% in, 150%. You know, he gives everything, and he spent so much time trial and error, just a perfect fuel management. He found a way to like not to go in a straight line like the like the planner gets you to there, but he like devised his own sort of track where he manually selected the systems, and that gave him just enough fuel to sort of like not to fill the tank, or it was just enough to be to have that 2 jumps more, or even just 1 jump more, so he skipped 1 jump, and that's like a couple of minutes already written off the
let's
time.
talk about that for a minute, because you're people watching what you're doing now, and you're sort of jumping from system to system. Now, if you've got 2 jumps from one waypoint to another, each of those jumps is a minute. Now, if you've got a fast ship and you're good at docking, and you might be able to shave 30 seconds off your time in being really skillful at docking compared to someone who's a bit more cautious. If you can shave a jump off your route, that's a whole minute gone.
That's true.
So you then start getting into things like you've got 2 jumps between 2 systems, and you start thinking, how can I get that down to 1? And if you're running unlimited, then partly that's just having a better ship or better engineering. But also, if you're carrying less fuel, then your weight is down, and you might just suddenly find that if you just have a tiny bit less fuel, if you have maybe 30% fuel, you can do it in 1 jump, and if you've got 40% fuel, it still takes you 2. So then managing these simple circuit races can become very technical. That you have to scoop until your fuel is at 45% in order to have sufficiently low fuel on the next jump that you can skip a jump.
And I think that's what he did. I think that's what he did. Just I know he spent hours on this, trying to devise his own sort of screw the navigation planner. I'm gonna do it my own way, sort of a thing. And that's how he got to one of the higher places in the table, even though it was like his first Buckyball race ever. So that was quite impressive. He's actually the guy. I don't know if you remember. There was a time where when he did a race, that was before engineers, and he did a race to Colonia in under 3 hours, and that was like
Really?
That's amazing.
or maybe like 3 hours and 11 minutes. So it was really low at the time, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, how did you even do this?" And he was like, "Well, I spent hours planning this."
Well, yeah. I mean,
So-
well, now a lot of the people who do the sold Sagittarius star run sort of do that, but a lot back in the day was basically one of the first people, certainly in the Buckyball Racing Club, to actually plan his routes almost jump for jump. And when you think, like you say, with the run to Colonia, I mean, Sag-A is like 26,000 light years away, and you're planning every single jump. And I remember one year when we were at LaveCon, actually, I think it was either 2016 or 2017, and he was sat there with his laptop jumping every single jump to Sagittarius A star, and then when he'd get into a system, he'd look at how much fuel he's got left, and then he'd work out the distance to the next star, and then write down the name of that system, so that he could then add that to his sort of list. And he was just going through step by step, working out every single jump that he had to do. Now,
Wow.
I don't have the patience to do that.
No, really.
Yeah, definitely, man.
So the way that I sort of run 90% of the races is just by using the in-game route plotter. There are a few times where I will sort of deviate from that a little bit, because one of my biggest pet hates about the route plotter, and there are many because it is still riddled with errors, unfortunately, is the fact that it doesn't matter how much fuel you currently have, the route plotter will only plot routes based on what your minimum jump range is.
Really?
So fully laden. So if you're sitting at a third of a tank and you have a jump range that's 35 light years, but at a full tank it's 33 light years,
Yeah.
and you want to go to a station that's 34 light years away, it will plot you two jumps
Two
to get
jumps.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've also
But
noticed
you
that at
know-
the very end of the plan, it gives you like 2 shorter jumps or 3 shorter jumps.
Yeah, sometimes it just does weird things, but you know that if you plot a route to that star, because like you've done here, so I think it was actually Alec who first sort of suggested it, the idea of not only bookmarking the systems that you're going to, but also numbering them. So you basically just have them 1 to 5 so that they always appear at the top of the bookmarks list, which is absolutely genius.
Yeah, well, that's what I do with mine. If you look here.
Yeah, and so you just click on them and then plot a route to it, but what you have to do if it's going to take you to 2 jumps rather than 1 is that you plot the route to it, and then you have to actually click to target the system rather than just letting the route plotter, and that overrides the fact that it wants to take you somewhere else first.
All right, I see.
Yeah, I've certainly done races in the past where you've got, say, 4 stops, so you've got bookmarks 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then because you found that if you manually plot between, suppose between bookmark 1 and 2 you've got 3 jumps, and you can do it 2 if you manually plot and get the fuel right. I might have another bookmark called 1B or 2A or something.
Oh, I see.
Which isn't a stop on the race course itself, but it's a waypoint to manually plot.
All right.
I have done those where we've had races, especially races where you have to land on a planet and your next system is obscured, so you know it's going to be an obscure jump for a while. So depending on the gravity of the planet and depending on how far the jump is obscured, most of the time it's actually quicker to jump to another system and then jump to the system you want to go to, rather than trying to escape orbital cruise. So I'll put a little sort of 3.5 in there, which is the escape from Planet 3, just to then be able to sort of get out. But I have noticed that if you're on a very, very low gravity planet and the jump is only sort of just obscured by a mountain range or something like that, then actually if you jump up into orbital cruise, you can get to jump in about 30 seconds, and that's going to be quicker than the minute that it's going to take to jump to another system. But that's the thing about the time trials, is that we do them generally over a week, and the whole certainly for me, the whole point of it is to just see how well you can do on your first run, and then spend the rest of the week trying to better your run.
Yeah. See, I don't have the patience.
And every now and again, I'll find that actually my second or third run is the best. It doesn't matter if I sort of try it again, I'll never manage to just nail it as good as I did that first sort of couple of times.
Sometimes it just works.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Shit. Rocket's docking. Just, oh my god, that was so close.
Now request docking.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You learn maybe not very quickly, but you learn which are the best pads to take for small ships and for medium ships, because I don't race in large ships. I don't fly large ships at all. And you know that, for example, I know that for a medium ship, you don't want to get pads like 5 and 11 especially, and 41 and 35 I think it is. There's some that are, for me, and this is where it gets like, I was going to say this is where it gets a bit interesting, but I don't know if people find it interesting.
They're the ones at the back.
No, they're the ones right at the front.
I don't mind
You
those.
see, I don't like landing pads that are right at the front, because for me, I like to be able to sort of come in at a fair speed, and then when I leave the station, I find it easier to get the alignment right for coming out of the station if I'm a bit further back. Whereas I know that Alec quite likes the landing pads that are right at the
I
front.
mean, they're not my favourite, don't get me wrong. They're not my
No.
favourite. But I suppose there's this weird thing that if it's a pad like pad 1 that's right near the front, I feel like, well, at least I know where that is. You know, I know
that is true.
I know the manoeuvre I need to do to get to it. It's like it's all there in the muscle memory.
Yeah.
I know where that pad is, whereas...
I think you should play more elite darts at LaveCon.
Yeah.
that will teach you the pad numbers.
Yeah. So with the small ships, because you're flying a small ship at the moment, I know off the top of my head, because I'm sad, that 12, 13 and 36 are the pads that I want to get. And so I will sometimes, depending on the angle you approach the station from, and since they made the holograms in Super Cruise actually reflect the way the station is pointing.
Oh, that's loads of help, isn't it? Oh my god.
It's a lot easier to get it so you're face on. So I can request docking clearance, and if I don't get a pad that I like, cancel and re-request docking clearance about 4 times between 7.5 kilometres and just as you're about to go through the slot. So you can generally get one of those 3 pads before you get into the station. And when you dock at those pads and then you launch off of them again, the mail slot is sat directly in front of you vertically. So you're sat on the landing pad and the slot is just pointing straight up in front of you. So what that means for me is that when you take off, all you need to do is tilt your ship up and then hit boost. You don't have to worry about making sure you're at the right height to fit through the slot, because the slot is vertical. And as you're in a small ship, you're going to be able to fit through it whichever angle.
That's really clever. That's so clever. See, I would have never even thought of that, ever.
I've done quite a few races.
Well, yeah.
It's not something that I came up with straight away.
One thing I found, particularly post-engineering actually, is so if you're doing a regulation class like you're doing now in the slower sort of ships like the Adder here, then what Ozric was talking about, cancel and re-request is totally a thing to get the right pad. But before in the unlimited class, so the reason my Imperial Courier, I forget what it can do. It's like over 800 meters a second. It has the bobbleheads on it say too fast, and the reason they say that is that actually it is too fast. A ship that can do 800 meters a second. There is no time to cancel and re-request docking. You hit docking request, and then it's time to start thinking about landing, and you just have to take what you're given. Which is
you almost have to put the landing gear down before you get into the station as well, don't you? And that sort of
there's no time to cancel and re-request, which is quite fun doing.
See, this like. See, I know, obviously I know about the different locations of the landing pads, but I would just never sort of thought to, like, oh, I'm going to cancel the docking request, I'm going to get a new one now just to get a better get a landing pad, because for me it's like, oh, it's just like regular docking, right? Even though I know it's a race, obviously, but I'm like, is it's not. I'm not in the racing mindset, if you like, you know what I mean. It's like I'm just in the normal playing mindset. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna request dog launch, and then go to the next system. But you guys go, how can I actually make this faster? Shit, I think
Well, I think part of that is because you're aiming to beat your own time. Oh, that's real close.
That was really bad. Jesus.
Well, you didn't crash out of Super Cruise, so it's fine. Because you're trying to beat your own time, you're looking for any sort of way that you can just sort of shave a bit of time off. But actually, the reason why that mainly comes around is the thing that I love most about the Buckyball Racing Club, which is the forum threads that we do that go along with the races. Because apart from being really funny, and there are a few people who just like Commander Inga Stevenson just writes the most amazing posts.
Whole plays about.
Yeah, completely in character, and it's just so good, and they're so good to read. But we also share any tips and tricks that we come up with. There's no sort of holding things back so you get an advantage over the other people you're racing. It's always about sharing everything. Well, the majority of the time, it's always about sharing everything you know. We have done a couple of races.
Unless you get a really good one, I think, I'll sit on that for a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fair enough. If you discover something for that given race, you're like, aha, I've got that. That'll give me a bit of an advantage. Obviously, that's quite obvious. You would hold on to that until maybe the race is over and be like, right, guys, that's how I won. Next.
And then that's the thing, because at the end of the race, when the race finishes, then that's not the end of the forum thread, because then it tends to go on for sort of a few days or a week or so, with people posting the videos of their final run and talking about how they sort of plotted their route and how they worked out where they were going to go and things like that. And it's through just reading the forum threads that I've picked up so many things. I think it was Drakir who was really up on the noting down the numbers of the landing pads and making sure that he sort of got the right one that was better for him. And so that's the only reason that I actually started thinking about it. Was because it was something that he had sort of raised up, and until then I hadn't really considered it. But it's one of those things, once somebody says it, you're just kind of like the boosting directly out of a station when you come to leave. Once someone says it to you, you're just like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Now it takes a while to train your brain out of it sometimes, because your instinct is, as soon as you come out of the station, to point towards where you want to go.
Yeah,
it's just like when you jump into a star system and nice. when you jump into a star system, if the station that you're heading to is not sort of in front of you, so you have to loop yourself around the star, again your instinct is to just hug close to the star and fly towards the station. Actually, once again, it's much faster to just fly directly away from the star, even if you're going away from the station that you want to go to, until you break the gravity well, and then you turn to face the station.
How do you know that you break the gravity well?
Well, the way that I do it is I wait until the speed hits between 1 and 2 C.
I see.
So I think it's just something that over time you sort of you get a feel for. Although going back to what Alec said earlier, you can also tell by the sound of the engine.
Oh, wait, they started sort of like whizzing in really high tones at some point, don't they?
Yeah, and then once it frees itself up, it starts loosening.
I was going to ask actually, I was talking about, because one thing I still haven't quite figured out is if you're if you're sort of trying to circumnavigate a planet because maybe you've got an obscure jump, or if you're trying to get from one planetary location to another one around the backside of the planet, you know that thing where when your angle is 0, there's a little red zone in the middle there where your speed goes up quite a lot if you're...
Yeah.
I still haven't quite figured out whether the fastest way is simply to get all the way out and then go around and come back down, or whether you can take advantage of that little speed boost you get from the angle being 0. So in my current sort of these days, what I tend to do is, you know, on the altitude bar, there's the line for drop and there's the line for orbital cruise. I tend to sort of get my position about 75% of the way up that, and then go for that 0 degree approach to give me the little boost to skim around it.
Well, someone did a race recently, was it Edelgard's, where you had to visit the biological and signs of life. I learned through that race, and again just through trial and error and doing it, that it entirely depends on the gravity of the planet.
I love that there's no simple formula for here's how to win a buckyball game.
Indeed.
There are some tips, but ultimately it comes down to there is an art to it, and just a sense of how heavy the gravity is, or a sense of how big the planet is, or a sense of how far away the station is from the planet.
Yes, it does. It does become, sort of like a feeling, sort of most of the time. So there was one of the planets on me that I visited that had multiple sites on it. I think was like 0.05 G. And what I found was, so when you take off of the planet's surface, you hit the sort of the bottom of orbital cruise at about 100 meters off of the surface. And then I don't know how far it is. Is it 2 kilometers that you break out of orbital cruise, I think? And I found that actually you only needed to go up to about 200 to 300 meters before you could then spin around to get in that little blue zone at the 0 line to make your speed go up, and that would push you up above 200 meters per second, which tends to be at normal flight the hard cap for how fast you can go within orbital cruise. Whereas if you were on, I think one of the other planets I did was 0.8 G or maybe around 1 G, and actually with that one I had to fly to at least 1,000 meters away from the planet's surface before then turning around to hit that line, because if you try and do it only a couple of 100 meters off of the surface of the planet, then you won't actually get above sort of 120 meters per second. But if you fly up that little bit farther, so the gravity of the planet isn't affecting you as much. And that's one of the things, you know, as much as we do all moan about some of the stuff and the bugs that are in Elite and that have been in for ages, the fact that it has that much level of detail, that the planet's gravity can affect you as much as it does in ways that you wouldn't even think that it could affect you.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
just amazing and mind-blowing, and it's why, well, one of the reasons why Kay is an absolute genius.
It is beautiful, all the physics around gravity and supercruise and handling the ships is something absolutely wonderful about it.
But that's the thing about Elite, it's sort of like just love-hate relationship, isn't it? It's like you find all these bugs and you get, oh my god, this fucking game, I fucking hate it, all these bugs. And then you go, oh my god, this is such an amazing, beautiful game, I want to play it all the time.
I think one of the things that strikes me, I think, is obviously it's a big team. It was quite a big team then, and it's an even bigger team now. And in any big team, I think you get people that are truly something special, and they're, you know, without wanting to sort of criticise people in front of it too much, whoever designed, say, the handling of ships and supercruise is on a different level from somebody who decided how. I'm trying to think of something really bad now. There's plenty of examples. So, there are some things. There are many things that are so poorly thought out, and sort of the implementation.
Telepresence.
Yeah. There's loads of things that are really weak and not well done. And then there's things where you think whoever coded this was a real perfectionist and put in overtime and got it just beautiful. And then there's other people.
Yeah.
You can tell that there's other people who didn't really care about what they were doing and just did the bare minimum and said, done that, next job.
I guess that's what you said, in every team there'll be like somebody who's really passionate about the job and really loves to come to their office, while some other people be like, oh, it's just a job for them and it's not really, something they like maybe even doing. It's just a job that pays the bills, that's it. And I think you can tell quite often. I'm not talking about frontier specifically now, but just in general, in any sort of job really. You can tell.
I'm fortunate enough to work for a very small company who can indulge my perfectionism a little bit. So if I see something wrong, here's an example I was talking about recently, and people were talking in the Discord about the fact that if you turn off your power distributor, you can save some fuel and power, but it still functions. The only thing that happens when you turn off the distributor is that you can no longer adjust your pips.
Correct. Yes, that's what I do now actually in this very other.
It still works, so it still continues to refill your pips even when it's powered off. Now I think that's a bug. If I'd coded that and I'd spotted that later on, I would have gone back and fixed it. That would really annoy me. That's nonsense. Why is how is this unit consuming like so much power just to let you change the pips? It doesn't.
That's
something
true.
like that doesn't feel right, and I would go back and fix it. But I think one of the things that happens in a big company, obviously, is that you're less free to indulge your little perfections, and the managers are saying, no, that job's finished. Get on with what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. The main reason why I do that, 90% of the time, isn't so that I save fuel, or I do it to save power on some of my ships if I'm running a sort of, especially my exploration ships, if I'm running a low-end power plant. The main reason I do it is so that I don't accidentally change them around while I'm in the middle of a race. Because there's nothing more frustrating than accidentally hitting the reset button just as you're about to boost out the station.
And going, why isn't this damn thing working?
Exactly. and when you do boost, you're not going as fast as you could be because you don't then have 4 pips to engines.
I've been there before. Definitely.
But I totally get where you're coming from. Realistically, if you power off a unit, it shouldn't work.
Exactly.
I haven't been
like you power off the AFMUs and you can't then repair your ship with them until you power them back on again.
How are you doing here, Roots? I haven't been paying attention. Have you managed to complete a circuit?
I'm just going into the close. So that's the last station I'm going to. So that's the first one I've started from. So I'm getting back to where I came from. It's 47 minutes for now, so it's gonna be the worst time ever. But considering I've been up for 24 hours now, because I've got up 4 hours before the stream, so I actually have been up for 24 hours right now. Actually, I think you can forgive me. And
I have been trying to pay attention to what you're doing to see if there's anything I can suggest. The only thing, I don't know if Ozric has got anything. So the only thing I've noticed is, you do see this, the thing that this kind of race where you're jumping from system to system. The thing that nearly always wins out in the end is the supercruise approach to the station. I mean, that is king in this kind of races, is getting that right. I'm not perfect, and the people that win can just do it so much faster than me. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say that if your ETA on approach to a station is 6 or more, you're going too slow. If you're ever pulling back on the throttle, or if your throttle is not 100% and that ETA is 6 or more, then you need to push it a bit harder.
But at 5, that's it, right? At 5, you're gonna overshoot or not?
When you're at 5, well, obviously there's a scale here, and there's a sense. I have a sense that if you're about 5.5, you can still point.
Yeah,
still
well,
hold
you
it.
can, you can, yeah, you can get out of that situation by sort of like drifting away slightly.
Yeah.
or-
So there's two ways to control speed. Let's suppose that ETA has gone down to 4. Suppose you let it go past 6. It hits 5. You pull the throttle back to 0, and by the time you've done that, your ETA is now 4. You're going to overshoot unless you do something about that. And there's two things you can do. One is pitch. So naively, if you just pull the stick back.
Oh, the V
What slows
maneuver.
you down is partly the loop you're doing, but partly just pitch. So there's two things you can do there. You can pitch kind of backwards and forwards fairly wildly and do this sort of oscillating curve. It's pretty ugly and not very efficient, but that will hold that acceleration back a bit. And the other thing you can do is if you go full pitch, so pull the stick right back, you can then use yaw and roll to turn that into a kind of corkscrew.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah, okay.
But it doesn't really work out.
It's not.
Every now and then.
It's subtle, but it will.
Yeah.
It can hold it at 4.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
it won't-
Because you're still going towards the station, but sort of also losing your speed at the level that you will have it perfectly fine at the time that you actually approach. So
And then the other
I
thing-
try to get it right, but it doesn't always work for me because I'm just not skilled enough. You know, it's just hours of practice.
practice.
Well,
And the other
that's the thing, it is practice.
I forgot. Have you got orbit lines on?
Nope.
So orbit lines are quite handy because you get the 2 rings around the planet. If it's a landable, you get the little thin blue ring, and if it's not a landable,
Oh, yeah.
you get the yellow ring. And the other thing I do is, I don't know if Ozric does this as well, is I turn on in the key bindings and the controls menu somewhere you can turn on a thing called mouse widget. And what that actually gives you is a tiny dot right smack bang in the middle of your screen. Now, when you're approaching, if you're trying to cut really close past a planet because your ETA is now 3 seconds and you need the drag of that planet to pull that speed back before you shoot straight past the station, what you can do is you place that little tiny dot that the mouse widget gives you just outside of the circle that the orbit line gives you, and that will guarantee that you're not going to cut close to the planet.
That's true.
And often I'm doing that, you know, I'm literally trying to get that little dot as close to that circle as I can without going inside it. And, you know, that can save you
But
when you're ETA
that
is-
also depends on the size of the planet, right? So that was a really bad overshoot. So if the planet is too big, then it's going to slow you down too much. And that's the thing. I think it's just practice. You just need to know the size of the planet.
Totally.
But obviously, check on the system map. That helps. I didn't do that obviously because we didn't have time to do that today.
To be perfectly fair, when I do Buckyball races, I tend to do my first run blind. So I will just bookmark the systems, I'll know where I want to go, and I'll just do it and see what happens. And then from that, I will sort of work out if actually some of these planets I can take a little bit faster or slower. Now I don't actually use the mouse widget because I use the sort of the speed lines that you have in the centre of the screen going either side. I use those as a gauge of where the centre point of the ship is essentially.
Yeah.
Also, I find that, like you were talking about with the corkscrew approach, it does depend quite a lot on the ship that you're flying as to the visibility of it. Now, I have this thing, and I don't know whether it's to do with my ADHD or if it's just sort of something that's hard coded into me, I think. But I have this thing where I do the corkscrew and the spirals, I always have the station in the top right hand corner.
53 minutes and 23 seconds. Sorry.
Nice. Yeah, you beat the hour mark. Not
Hey.
bad for a run while talking to people and after 24 hours of being awake.
So, so look at the leaderboard.
Yeah, so I always try to have the station in the top right hand corner. And so like Alec was saying about when you sort of try and turn it into a corkscrew, basically, I aim to keep that station in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and how I do my approach with pitches and spirals and things like that is all dependent on trying to keep it in that top right-hand corner. But for whatever reason, I can't have it in the top left-hand corner because my brain just won't let me flip the way that I do the controls, because it's become so much muscle memory that now I don't even think about it.
Gotcha.
And so when I'm flying like a Python, that's, if I'm doing some trading, and so I'm flying a Python that's got like 208 tons of cargo in it, I still try and do that, even though I'm flying a ship that weighs about 10 times more than my normal racing ships and doesn't turn very well at all. That's just muscle memory, and that's how I fly now, and I actually find it very hard. So in the Adder, for example, the top right hand corner of your cockpit screen is blocked off by the ship. So as soon as the station goes off of the cockpit and behind the structure of the ship, you won't see it anymore.
That's true.
But in the top left-hand corner, you've got a lovely clear piece of glass that you can look through.
You can't bring yourself.
I would find it so hard. No, I would find it so hard to move to have it in that top left and the top right.
I know what you mean. I think like that. You know, I definitely favour left turns over right turns, and that just goes with being right-handed. I think to some extent, doing a roll to the right just feels slightly weird, and doing a roll to the left feels natural. And I think everyone's like that a little bit.
It's odd, and that is a big thing of the racing and the things that we've been talking about. It's just something that you get used to, and like Alec said, sort of however long ago it was, quite a while ago, a lot of it is very hard to explain to people, because a lot of it is just made up from your own experiences. So when we were talking about supercruise approaches and the spiralling to sort of try and the corkscrew approach to get the best gravity braking approach, when we were talking about that, it must have been like 3 or 4 years ago, and Alec said about the fact that he finds the audio so important in that. Now, I never play Elite without the audio on, especially if I'm racing. I can't do it, and I can't really understand how people can do it because the engine noise of your ship is so important. And actually, if I think all the way back to playing Gran Turismo 3 on the PlayStation 1, the engine noise of the car that you're driving is far more important than what the speedo says. So if someone says you can take this corner but you can only take it at 65 miles an hour, I have no idea how fast I'm taking that corner. All I know is the sound that the engine is making when I'm going around that corner.
I see.
And it's far more accurate than the speed. So it's the same with this, that you know, you can I made a gravity braking guide recently, well, again, it was probably a couple of years ago now, just because I was doing a race and one of the approaches happened to work out perfectly. And when I was trying to write captions for that to put on the video, I realised that when I started writing it out, I was like, basically every attempt starts the same, and it's kind of like Alec said, you go full throttle until the ETA hits 5 seconds. When it hits 5 seconds, you zero the throttle, move the station to the top corner of the screen, and from that point on, your throttle and your speed don't mean anything until you get within 25 micrometers of the station.
Yeah,
It's all about the sound of your engine.
See, this is just so advanced for me that I just can't even get my head around it. I think for this...
It probably doesn't help that you've been awake for 24 hours.
Probably. Maybe may have something to do with this.
What was
guys,
your time again? I'm just looking at the scoreboard as well. Did you say 58?
53.23.
Oh, nice. That's not bad.
So I'm sort of between Richie and Pike, I think. Yes, Richie and Pike. These guys actually are in the chat. Richie and Pike. Look at this, guys. You beaten me, Richie, and I've beaten Pike this time. Rock and roll, man. What was my actual? And look, previously on that actual race, my best time was 49.28. So it's not that much worse to my actual best race time on that race.
No, not
but
at
that
all.
also shows how bad I am at this.
Well, again, and I will just say this quickly because I know that we've hit 12 o'clock, so you'll need to move on. But when like I say, I first did a Buckyball race back in the beta, and I didn't then do a few for quite a while because I was out exploring in the galaxy and sort of trying to sort of break grounds in that way. And when I came back to it, it must have been about 2 years before I even got into sort of the top 5 in the leaderboards. I was always right near the bottom because part of me didn't sort of care too much about getting up the top, but also I was still learning all of those tips and tricks, and it's really only been the last couple of years that I've actually started getting up towards the top of the leaderboards. So it does depend quite a lot, and I think a few people do sort of get disheartened. We've had a few people who have started the races for sort of the first time, and if they don't get in the top 3, then they're just like, oh well, it's not really worth it. It's like, well, that's completely not what the Buckyball Racing Club is about.
When I started, and we started this stream with me describing Electric Z and those early races, and me joining Buckyball, the Buckyball Run 6. When I first did that race, I was so green, and I think I dabbled with the fuel scoop for the first time, and I had an E, the worst fuel scoop. and I'd basically written off fuel scoops because it was so useless. I thought, well, fuel scoops are rubbish. There's no point using them. So when I did the race, I was having to go detour and go and land at stations to refuel. and then my time was like half an hour slower than everyone else's. I didn't care. I was just having so much fun. And
yeah, that's the thing. Having fun is always the most important thing in these things.
Yeah.
If you're in it, well, obviously some people are in it to win, right? Like, look at this, Arnold. See, this guy. That was the guy I was talking about before. That was his first Buckyball race ever, and he finished up on the 3rd place. He beat you, both of you.
That's quite impressive.
But he spent hours. I know he spent hours perfecting this race. But that was his first Buckyball race ever. And he scored 3rd. That's honestly, Arnold, right?
Some people just have it. There's a guy, he hasn't raced for a while, which I think is a real shame. But there's a guy called Cookie Hole.
He's number 1 in the unlimited in this race.
I remember Cookie Hole. Yeah, definitely from back in the day.
He just has it. I don't know what it is about him, and I think a lot's the same. I know that he plans his routes a lot, but when it comes to just approaches and landing at a station, he just has something that just makes him good.
Ozric, I have a theory, Ozric, about Cookie Hole.
Oh, go on.
I think he's back. I think he's changed his name to Shea Blackwood, and I think he's back.
Well, that is definitely a distinct possibility.
You've never seen them together.
No, you haven't. That's very true. But he would always post his videos after the race had finished on how he did it. And you just watch the videos and you're just like, I don't understand how you've done that. Watching it, I can see what you've done, but I don't understand what you've done. You're quicker. He's just quicker. It's madness. Brilliant. So yeah, some people are just like that.
Beautiful. All right, guys, I think I need to wrap this up now. It's running over. My next guest is already waiting. Okay. I made notes of this, despite me being awake for 24 now hours. Obviously, not minutes, hours. I did make notes. So first of all, supercruise approach. Second of all, the correct landing pad. Third of all, pay attention to where your systems are when you're jumping into the system. So when it's like on the other side of the star, fly away from the star, fly directly opposite direction until you get that speed. Oh no, so that's for the station, until you get that speed.
No,
so
that's for both of them.
Oh, both of them. There we go. So that's even better. So I did make some notes. I will try to beat this record. Actually, I am going to go back into this race. I promise, and I will try to beat my previous record even. I will beat my previous 49 minutes 28 seconds. I will beat this sooner or later. James, thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for committing your time to this.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate it. It's been great. And I think I'm gonna try some more Buckyball races now, because I've not done a lot of them. I've done a few, but not a lot of them. But now I think I'm gonna go back to this thread. And then
Well, it's funny you should say
There's a new
that.
one starting next weekend. Yeah, so next Saturday there's a
Oh,
new one starting
beautiful.
called Real Men
You
Wear
like
Leather
it
Coats.
because it
Sorry, just call.
and it involves taking beer from one station to another.
Excellent. That's even better. That's all the Hussars will be on. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Now that you've said that. Anyway, guys, thanks.
Can I post a link?
Of course
in
you can.
your,
Hang on, let me just
chat? So if
let me just
you
play with
permit
you.
me, then I'll just drop in a link to the Buckyball
There you go.
Discord. People can. Oh, no, I was timed out. Even though you permitted me, I was then timed out.
Sorry, Ozric.
Oh, I was obviously too quick. Sorry.
Okay, try
There
again.
you
then.
go.
Oh,
Oh no, it's identical.
try again.
Right,
Hang on.
Because I made it
Oh, there you go.
identical to the previous
Oh,
message.
is that the
that's why.
Buckyball Discord?
Yeah, so that's the Buckyball Discord.
I'm not even
So
on
if-
it, you know? I don't think so.
Like Alex said, there's the channel there that's called Hints and Tips,
Mhm.
and we have the sort of the videos about super cruise approaches and various different things like that. So there's things that people can pick up there, even if they don't then end up taking part in a race. It will just help you in your normal everyday flying. So
Sure.
worth giving it a look.
Beautiful. I will definitely have a look on that. All right, nice one.
Cool.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, James.
That's all right. Enjoy the rest of your stream.
I will
Thanks,
do. I will
luck.
do.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Speak to you soon, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.